Research Institute welcomes you to today's special lecture on migration and the state amid COVID-19 pandemic, organized by Center for Work and Welfare at IMPRI. Since its inception, one of the focus areas of the Center for Work and Welfare has been to provide evidence-based policy and research, and the pandemic-induced lockdown has led us to pursue research on the migrant labor crisis in different parts of India. In our continuous quest to learn, we are very privileged to have with us the expert himself, Professor Irudaya Rajan, who is professor at Center for Development Studies, Trivandrum, Kerala, and has over 35 years of research experience. He has coordinated 7 major migration surveys in Kerala since 1998, Goa Migration Survey 2008, and Tamil Nadu Migration Survey 2015. He played an instrumental role in conducting the Punjab Migration Survey 2009 and also the Gujarat Migration Survey 2011. He has published extensively in national and international journals on social, economic, and demographic implications of international migration. Recognizing migration-related research done at CDS, Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs established a research institute on international migration during 2016, where Professor Rajan acted as chair professor. He has undertaken projects on international migration with European Union, International Labour Organization, International Development Research Centre, Canadian Institute of Health Research, World Bank, International Organization of Migration, South Asian Network of Economic Institute, Rockefeller Foundation, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organizations, among others. He currently has projects with Indian Center for Migration, UAE Exchange Hubby, and Columbia University, USA. Professor Rajan has worked closely with the Ministry of External Affairs, earlier Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs, and Department of Non-Resident Keralite Affairs, Government of Kerala. Professor Rajan is also the editor of annual series India Migration Report and also editor-in-chief of International Journal of Migration and Development, brought out by Taylor and Frankie's. We are so delighted to have you, sir. I am extremely happy to welcome the chairperson of today's webinar, Professor Shakti Kak, who is also honorary chairperson at Center for Work and Welfare at IMPRI. She is a PhD from JNU and specializes in the field of agrarian relations, labor, gender, and economic history. She has written extensively on these issues and has been affiliated to reputed national and international institutions like IIT Delhi, Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, and others. Madam, we are so delighted to have you in this lecture. We have with us Professor R.P. Mamgane, who is Professor S.R. Shankaran Chair at National Institute of Rural Development in Panchayati Raj, Hyderabad. Sir, I welcome you in this discussion. We also have with us Professor Arvind Pandey, who is Assistant Professor at School of Public Policy and Governance, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, TIS, Hyderabad. Thank you, sir, for joining us in this session. We also have Mr. Madhusudan Nag, who is a PhD student at Center for Development Study, Trivandrum. Sir, I welcome you in this session. I would like now Arjun sir to take over the stage.
It is me?
Yes, thank you so much, Ritika, for such a wonderful introduction. And this is a very pertinent topic, and based upon our last deliberation where Professor Irudaya Rajan very actively participated, and with a huge demand across the country, and I would say also abroad, people have been wanting to hear what Professor Rajan has been saying. We also hold one event centric to Tamil Nadu, where also Chennai Smart City CEO came, and also in other studies where also government authorities came, and sir very strongly reflected what the state is doing and what the state should do. With these words, I now hand over to our chair for the session, Professor Shakti Kak, also chairperson for our CWW Center IMPRI. Ma'am, over to you. Some reflection, and then we'll invite our distinguished.
Yeah, thank you very much. and good afternoon to Professor Rajan and other very esteemed panelists. This is a very timely discussion on the state of our workers, in which migrant workers are such a huge component. Therefore, Professor Rajan's talk on migration and the state is extremely important, because I would assume that the role of the state is so very important in dealing with all the fundamental, crucial questions related with the condition of migrant workers and workers in general. Now, I think the kind of economic closure that happened on the 25th of March had the largest and the strongest impact on these workers, who are not only migrant workers, they're also workers employed in unorganized sector, which sometimes even is short of records, it is short of any welfare measures, it's short of any labor contract, humane labor contract. So these are the segments of our society that paid the heaviest price for this virus that arrived in India whenever. That's a different kind of a debate. Now, from migrant labor force, of course, is a multi-layered problem. You have workers, educated, place of origin, to wherever they get good employment. Sometimes maybe not in that kind of correct off in terms of their wage levels, their employment contract. But then there is another layer, which is employed in the unorganized sectors, like that exist everywhere in India, but largely, say, in Surat, or in Erode in Tamil Nadu, or in various small and big handloom industry, that power loom industry that exists. And these are the workers which are not really seasonal or secular workers, but they are employed in the kind of contract jobs where, again, there is no guarantee of employment or any other welfare measures, social protection that they should get. The lowest in this layer are the circular, seasonal migrant workers who leave their places with the help of labor contractors, with the help of their connections in the area of their work, whether it's construction, it's brick kilns, it's harvest activities, some kind of farm work that they do. These are the workers. They go mostly alone, sometimes accompanied by their wives or a small, the young family, and end up in a work of employment for 6 to 7 months, maybe from December, the season starts till June or July, and then they march back to their work wherever they have originated from to their villages. So it is this segment of the population, the unorganized workers and the seasonal circular labor, that really bore the brunt of this economic closure that happened in the last week of March. And perhaps we had, even people like us, like me, who have always worked on labor issues, never felt the visible impact of so many workers with their young families walking down 800,000 kilometers because their place of work had become so inhospitable to them. And there again, it is, of course, lots of NGOs provide them with meals, we provide them, but actually it is the role of the state that was wanting, that was totally deficient, inhumane, and unsympathetic to these workers, which we saw by their presentation to the Supreme Court, where these issues, some people had gone in to petition to give them a decent passage to their homes. And so this is then what we are dealing with now. But there is a larger issue also here. After all, the issue of migrant workers has been there ever since. It is the the basis of whatever surplus generation, labor exploitation, and in this capitalist system. So they have always been there. Now, therefore, what becomes important is the role of development policies, the role of development policies in the condition, in the kind of work profile, work systems that they work in. Are their jobs, do their jobs have a minimum wage? Do they have social protections? Do they have some registration process? All that is part of a larger project or larger system. And so when we are studying or looking at the stark reality of these workers walking from their place of work to their villages in search of humanity, in search of dignity, in search of food, in search that somehow they wanted to reach their villages, we have to have this entire picture, the gamut of issues that this process of development that has opened up, or that has that these workers face from time to time. So I'm sure Professor Rajan, of course, has been working on all these issues, and other panelists will elaborate on it, and we will get further views on this. And with this, I hand it over to Professor Rajan for this lecture.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Let me take this opportunity to thank the IMBRI for inviting me to speak on the topic which I work on for quite some time. I also want to thank the chair and other members who are listening to me. And I just want to start with saying that some of you are familiar with Sustainable Development Goals. One of the goals is talking about facilitating orderly and safe migration through appropriate migration policies. Now, I want to use this as a point, and I will be focusing today mostly on internal migration. I'm not going to talk about international migration for the time being, unless somebody wanted to raise some questions. But I'll spend my time mostly on the internal migrants. Now, when you start talking about facilitating orderly and safe migration with the appropriate policy, that requires two important dimensions. One is data, second is policy. Unfortunately, both does not exist in this country. Both does not exist. What you have is nobody talks about how many are there. We don't know anything about them. The second is there is no policy. We have only Interstate Migration Act. Act is different. We are talking about immigration bill is different. But policy, we have no policy. We have agricultural policy. We have industrial policy. We have policy for many things. But we don't have policy for migrants. I think that is also missing. And then the database. Why database was missing, I am telling you, is that, as all of you remember, for the migrants, they have seen several fevers. I don't think they are worried about COVID. I talked to one of the migrants. They said, sir, who bothers about COVID? Because we were living in the overcrowded all the times. For us, COVID does not matter. But we have made them COVID is matter. That is what I call them middle class versus poor class. People like us, we also included in that. For us, COVID does not matter because we are working at home. But the migrants, the poor migrants, they cannot work at home. They have to be work on the road. So it is also the middle class using COVID-19 to treat the poor class in a poor way. bad way. I think this is something I want to elaborate on that maybe in the later stages. Now, why I'm saying there is no data? Remember, many countries had lockdown, but we have not seen the picture like what we have seen in this country, walking, dying through the railway tracks, begging for food, coming in large number to the railway stations. Why we have not seen in other countries? I think we never talk about that, including the country Bangladesh. Not many people are walking in the Dhaka city when the lockdown was announced. The problem is, we have no idea about how many are where. We don't know even migration corridors. I don't know any policymakers have any idea about where people go. And Indian Railways knows. Indian Railways is benefited by migrants. Otherwise, Indian Railways would have been lost long like Air India. It will be like Air India. Loss-making company, Indian Railways. But Indian Railways is making money because of the migrants. They were traveling, all the trains is full with migrants. Before the pre-COVID, we are not talking about COVID Sarmic trains. We are talking about the normal train. You go to Chennai, you go to Delhi, you go to, these migrants. But we don't know how many, where they're going, what are they doing, we have no idea. We know, but we never wanted to bother about them. That is why, when the curfew was announced on March 23, on Sunday, at least they would have given a hint for the migrants saying that, look, we are going to have a lockdown is coming soon. Like a teaser for the movie. When the movie never comes, the teaser comes first. The trial comes first, then you say, oh, you are waiting for the movie. Oh my God, I have not seen the full song because there may be a small fight because it's only 3 minutes. But the movie will be 3 hours. And at least a teaser would have been told to migrants, saying that, look, it's coming, so better be ready. Nothing was mentioned on what is called the Janata curfew. Then on Tuesday, Prime Minister is coming and telling at night, saying that we are going to have a lockdown tomorrow. And migrant had no time to move. Even you would not have moved from Delhi to Haryana. I would not move from Chennai to Delhi. Everything was completely closed. No train, no bus, no vehicle, no walk, only police, 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 everywhere. And this is the first time we have seen the borders. We have not seen the border. In fact, I was thinking, I was living in another country. I have to take a e-pass, show your Aadhaar card, where are you going? We never was asked like this in our own country. Everywhere you are asked questions. And this was started on the lockdown 1.0. And that time they would have given 1 week time. Just 1 week. If they would have understood the migration, the numbers, the corridors, they would have allowed the special train. What we are talking today, Sarmic train. Special train would have been provided the migrant on lockdown 1.0 for 1 week. Announced, the government would have announced, anybody want to go back, there will be a lockdown and we are arranging special trains, special bus, special flights, special cycle, anything you can move back. 1 week is given the time, probably you would not have seen anybody walking on the road. We have failed. But then people tell me, you are telling, what about coronavirus? I told them, when the Prime Minister announced on the lockdown 1.0, the coronavirus infection in India is only 500. The state which I am sitting, Kerala, was leading as #1 in India. On March 29, Kerala was #1 in India. Of course, we are not #1 now. And we don't want to be #1 anyway. There are many states want to take #1. And Maharashtra was #2 with 20 difference. And someone asked me, sir, Kerala is #1. I said, should be #1 because we have more migrants. But then, of course, that scenario is completely changed. When there was 500 infection, you were not given trains for the migrants to leave. When it is 3 lakhs, you told them, please go. Please go. They are given special trains. That is not Sarmi train. That is Corona Express. That is Corona Express. Chennai to everywhere. Now, the whole country, villages, you are seeing Corona. We have made a big mistake by not allowing them at the lockdown 1.0 week time. And what the Bangladesh government did, they said 1 week holiday. Then come lockdown. You should announce holiday. Then lockdown. I think we have done that mistake partly because we don't know the importance of migration. Let me come back to the numbers. Everybody gives some number. I have some number I'm telling for last almost now 2 months. According to 2011 census, 450 million people in this country are living in a place they are not born. 450 million. That includes me, you, our Prime Minister Modi too. All of us are living in a place they are not born. I think people who are listening to us now, 51 participants who are listening, all of them are migrants. But then how many are migrants, we don't know. 450 million in 2001. Now 2011, 21 census, we don't know. It may not even happen. But then we can project what will be the next population. And if you add another 150 million, which we are adding every census period, and also this government had initiated what is called the smart cities. Smart city means urbanization, because the government of India believes urbanization will lead to high economic growth. Urbanization means it is migration. It is migration, nothing beyond that. Urbanization, any city, there will be migrants. So if you add that 150 million, India currently in 2020 has close to 600 million people are living in a place they are not born. But not all of them are migrants. Out of that, 1/3, 200 million people are either interstate, we have 35 states, or inter-districts. Because Corona told us not to move between districts. You can not only move between the state, you cannot move between districts also. Trivandrum, I cannot go to Kollam. I cannot go to Tamil Nadu. Anyway, so everything is closed. So interstate and inter-district migrants account for 200 million. 1/3 of the people are moved either inter-district or interstate. I'm not talking about intra-district. People move within the district. No, I'm not talking about them, because they would take an at least move. Of course, the Corona period we could not move even within the district, but I allow them. They would have moved through cycle or motorbike. But between the district there was a border. Every district border there will be a policeman. Where are you going? So we could not move between district. Very strict. Between state. People cannot move from Karnataka to Kerala. There was a big, border was built. It's like like a Germany big border, like building a wall. We have seen. I did not know that we are living in one country. We are talking about one ration card. I don't know. So anyway, I will come back to that ration card later. So please remember, 600 million people, migrants. 200 million people are interstate and inter-district. Out of that, actually, people who are working for migration is 140 million. 1/3 of them are basically internal migrants. That means we are talking about 140 million people in this country are directly affected by lockdown 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, then June 31, now we are in July 31st. Even today we are in lockdown. In Trivandrum, it is a triple lockdown. I cannot go to my office. I am sitting in my house. Triple lockdown after 105 days. I can get at least some salary. That's why I said middle class people are making the poor to suffer more. Because we are all middle class, supposed to be middle class anyway. So work at home. And even today, and many states like Tamil Nadu, they have lockdown up to 31st of July. So they may be extended to August. I don't know. Lockdown may continue for months, another weeks. We don't know. This is the reality. Why? Because of that. And second thing, look at the cities. We have cities. Why I'm telling for 140 million? Kerala itself had 3 million migrants from other states. A small state called Kerala with 33 million people, 3 million are migrants. I don't want to tell about other states, 3 million. Now let us take the cities like Mumbai. Mumbai had something close to 15 million people. And Mumbai had 15 million people, Hyderabad 7 million, Delhi it's again 8 million, Chennai 5 million, Ahmedabad 6 million, Kolkata 5 million. To take all the major cities, they will come around 150 million. City population. And any city you go, Bombay city, Chennai city, at least half of them will be migrants. So this 140 million I am talking about is some type of a reasonable number. And the Economic Review reported that yearly 9 million people are moving by trains. So you are moving by train, flights, bus. There was so much interstate transport bus. We are not seeing anything right now. So people are moving, but we never knew they were moving. That is important for us because we have failed to do that. So that is the first point I want to make. We have failed to do anything for them in the lockdown period, partly because we did not know the number. The second point which I want to make is that we all believe that why people are coming, we say that because rural distress. So what do? In one side, we have policies to promote urbanization, and the other side, you have policies to keep the poor people in the rural areas. You have NREG, distress migration. So you give them 100 days work and 100 rupees be with at village. You are born as a poor, live as a poor, and die as a poor. So be in the village area. And then we always talk about Pura. You might have heard about providing urban facility in the rural areas. You try to give everything, but people are coming out. That means they are not happy there. They are coming out. So you should go for that. Though you promote, you don't want people to come through policies, but people are pouring into cities because cities, they can make more money than what they can make. And 100 days of work, what they will do for remaining 265 days? We never ask this question. We tell we'll give 100 days work. It's like I will give you one meal. What about other 2 meals? No, we are not talking. We are not putting ourselves into the migration shoes. We are always talking like I am talking. But I never ask the migrant what you need. We talk what migrant need. I think that is where we have failed. Now lockdown 1.0 is over. And then we could not give the proper time for migrants. Suppose the lockdown 1.0 was ended after 15 days, we would have said only 5 more days, then the train will move. We never said. We said 1 more lockdown, 2 more lockdown. So we are not given a definite conclusion. Look, you are in coma, this person will die. You should have some decisions. 1 month, tell the people. 2 months, 3 months, we are still locked down. Started in March 23. Can you imagine for the poor people? Domestic workers? Can anybody will give salary for the domestic worker who comes to our house? You tell her, work at home, I'll give you salary. How many of us will give to our domestic workers? Because he said, I can't come. Okay, you work at home. She will work for her house, not to you. Can you pay salary for her? No, we don't pay. You are not coming. I don't pay. So we are not realizing that. I think everybody, the migrants, small migrant, big migrant, informal worker, everybody is affected. So lockdown 1 was gone. Lockdown 2.0 was gone. 3.0, you are not given trains. You are given special trains. Even today, there are no trains. Somebody want to come from Trivandrum to Delhi, it's not like the olden days. Now you have only special trains. Even today, you don't have a regular train. If you go to Delhi railway station or Mumbai, you see how many trains will leave every half an hour. It is leaving now? No. So that means still the transport has not become normal. That's why the migrants have to pay money to run away from the place of origin. That's why one of the migrants told one of the interviews, I went to my village like I was transported like livestock. I was transported like livestock. He went by a lorry, like a lorry carrying cattle, lorry carrying chicken, lorry carrying goat, the lorry carrying people. He said, I was moved like livestock. I think migrant deserves better. Migrant deserves better, not the treatment in his own country. If they are treated in other country as a refugee, I can understand that. But you are treated like that in your own country. I think this is paining to us because we are all researchers. We are also failed to protect them. What we can do because we are not policymakers, unfortunately. So this is something happened, and then the train started moving. Of course, I told it's not the train; it is Corona Express. Now the Corona is spread everywhere. Villages, all the district. Now even district become lockdown. Some villages are become lockdown. We made them red because of the mobility. The disease was moving. Migrants are moving. Disease also moving. I was telling to one of the meeting 3 weeks back in an international conference. Anybody has seen Corona? No. Anybody has seen Corona? Nobody has seen. Where it is, we don't know. Is Corona has a passport? No. It has visa? No. Somebody said, I have a passport, I have a visa to go to America, I'm not able to go. Corona has gone. So Corona is moving like the migrants. We want to move, they are not allowing us to move. Whereas Corona is moving very freely, going to every state, going to every city, killing as many people as possible. Why can't I not allowed to go? I don't know. I am much worse than Corona. We are allowing me to stop. Everybody is stopping me, but not Corona. You could not stop Corona. Now we are already, we are the 3rd rank in the world. I'm sure we'll be reaching 2nd rank very soon. But I pray we should not move to 1st rank. We should not overtake America anyway. I believe that, but we don't know. Future is because every day the coronavirus is increasing. Even in Kerala where I sit, 3 consecutive days, there was not even a single infection of Corona. The Chief Minister will tell there is no Corona today. 3 days he said. Yesterday we had 400 plus. In Kerala it is 400 plus. I don't need to tell about other states because Kerala was number 1. Of course, now we will not come number 1 anyway because number 1 has gone. We are far beyond. Total is only 5,000 now for Kerala. I think already states are classing 1 lakh, 1.5 lakh, 2 lakh. So, but please remember, even Kerala is like that. So the Corona, we have moved them through the mobility. So what is happening because of that? Migrants want to leave their place of origin. That brings me to the second question. That is what the policy. Who is responsible for migrants? Is it the states of origin? Say UP, Rajasthan, Bihar, Orissa, people are coming back. Are they responsible to protect their citizen? Because they are holding Aadhaar card from village in Orissa or village in UP, or the state like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Bangalore, Mumbai, where they are destination places, are they responsible? Or the employer who employed them responsible? And Corona has shown nobody is responsible for migrants. That's why they were on the road. Why should they are on the road? Because nobody is responsible. Either the states of origin, nor states of destination, nor the employer. If the employers were very good, I talked to some employers in Kerala. Some employers are very good. It has shown the bad employer and good employer. Some employer who are very good, they kept the migrants, given them proper place to stay, given them food, given them salaries to send back home. Please remember, one migrant will be sending money to his family back home. Maybe 4 people might be eating because of this 1 person remittances. He never realized that. 1 person. 3 people are enjoying the benefits at home. So what we did, these migrants were started moving, nobody responsible. That's why people said they have to pay and go back. They have to pay and go back. Please remember, they said they have to pay and go back. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court has to come and tell us that please don't charge them. Maharashtra Chief Minister said, I will pay money from the CM Care Fund. Nobody is responsible. They were on the road. And please remember, migrants are not beggars. We made them to beg because of our wrong policy. And people were started moving by train, by bus, whatever comes on this way, they were leaving. That's why I said they were moving like what is called the livestock. Now, please remember, the returned migrants who have gone to villages. This is the first time in the history of migration. They went with empty hands. Normally, when the migrant goes back from Chennai or Delhi, from the state, he goes back with some money. He gives his family, his neighbors, his relatives. This time he is going back with empty hands. Not only that, he is also suspected to be the carrier of corona. Stigma. So you have created two disability for him. He's going back without money because the companies were not paid salary to him for the lockdown period. And then he is going the carrier of corona. When he goes back, he is put for 14 days quarantine. He has no money, he has been put. So he has been stigma also attached to them. That's why I was telling, we don't need to study what is called the farmer suicide. Now we should study returned migrant suicide. I think this is something I want people to do PhD on that. How many people died after returning home? How many people died before reaching home? How many people, it's all, it's all consequences of the lockdown, not because of corona. But corona people died. There is no doubt about that. But then the migrants were not in our policy thinking. We have CM fund, we have care fund by the Prime Minister. Somebody was telling all the CM fund or the PM fund should be used for buying ventilators. Agreed. You should buy ventilator because these people need oxygen. People who are going to die. But the migrants also need oxygen to eat food. So you should give money for the migrants also. It's equally important. They need oxygen, otherwise they will die. These people also will die because of starvation. So you want starvation deaths or corona deaths? Both are important. Both are equal for us. A man who is going to die, I am giving oxygen, he is surviving. Important. At the same time, I have to see that we are feeding the poor migrants. For them, the oxygen is food, healthcare. Not what you are talking, the big money we are talking about. This is something, so we have failed to do many things for them. Now let me come back one or two more points, then I will stop here. The third point is that we started talking about when the lockdown period is going on, the government announced 20 lakh crore revival package. 20 lakh crore. Of course, it was told several times by the Prime Minister, and then Finance Minister came back and giving talk for 5 days. What they offered for migrants? Nothing. Just 3,500 crores. Giving 5 kg rice and 1 kg wheat. Not for April and May who lost. This for June and July. I was telling 5 kg rice with 5 family members. Is it enough? You are not giving them food security. Of course, I heard last week Prime Minister saying it is not one family 5 kg, one person 5 kg. I said very good. Now at least 5 people mean they'll get 25 kg rice. I was thinking only one ration card 5 kg. Now they told no. How many people in the car they'll get 5 kg? I am very glad that I was thinking I was interpreted wrongly. Or Prime Minister said no, you are wrong. I am right. Every individual will get 5 kg, not the every ration card. I hope they are getting. I think the people who are listening, you should go and check. Is it correct or not? Is it 5 kg per ration card or 5 kg rice per individual? Our Prime Minister said last week it is per individual, not per ration card. Maybe I don't know. Somebody might have told him I am speaking to some places 5 kg is not enough. So now 25 kg. Good, very good. That means our talks are reaching right people. Very important for us because we are talking for the poor. We are not talking anything for us. We are talking for the people who cannot talk, oppressors. Yeah, because migrants cannot talk. Nobody is going to talk to migrants. I was telling them I am sitting in the studio of the channel. I tell them I am sitting here, but the migrants are on the road begging for the food. I am talking for them. So we are talking for the poor migrants. We are not talking anything for us. We are talking for the migrants. So they are getting, that is the only thing given in the 20 lakh crore, 5 kg rice. What are the other things? NREG. They added more money. So what? You have to work. And you cannot work. Lockdown. What it matters for them? And then housing in the cities. They are not going to come back. Who bothers about your housing? Then one ration card. That is August 2020. That means the immediate benefit only 3,500 crores out of 20 lakh crores. That again indicates how important be placed for them because they are not voters. They are not voters. I think that is where the politics are coming. They are not voters. Of course, election is coming now in many states. That's why they are talking about migrants. When the election is over, they will not talk anyway. I'm seeing some states at least they are talking about migration commission, migration program. Everybody talks about migration anyway. That's good for them. At least for the short term, they will get some benefits. But there is nothing was there. And I was telling them, the migrants should get 25,000 rupees in their account. Direct cash transfer. Why? Because NREG wage is 200 rupees. If they work for 30 days, they will get 6,000 rupees in a village. Why they are moving to city? They will get double wages. So 2 months, lockdown 1.0, 2.0, you made them not to work. They want to work. It is not strike by them. You made them sit at home. And you have to pay them 25,000 rupees in all the 140 million migrants' accounts. And I calculated, if I multiply 140 million multiplied by 25,000 rupees, it will cost only 3 lakh crore. 20 lakh crore was announced by the government. If you give 3 lakh crores to the poor's hand, money, and then they will be self-reliant. You are talking about self-reliant India. You have to make self-reliant migrant. For that, you have to give money. But I am very glad. After I was discussing about 25,000 crores, Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister announced, we are giving all migrant 1,000 rupees. I said, I am very glad. I want 25,000 rupees. Like you ask somebody, when you want some money, you ask your friends, I want 10,000. They said, look, I cannot pay it. I have only 5,000, take it. So UP Chief Minister has given 10,000 rupees for all migrant workers. Good, but I want 25,000. But that means, you know, the direct cash transfer is very, very important. Actually, it has gone to some people's mind. I'm very glad people are doing something for the poor migrant. And finally, why we are all missing this migration issue? As I said earlier, there is no data, there is no policy, nobody responsible. And now everybody tells me, they will come back. Everybody is asking me wherever that now every newspaper is asking me, sir, people have gone back. He said they will come back or not. I said, why should they come back? You treated them very badly. Why you want them come back? You told them go, get lost. You never paid salary. You never given them food. Migrants were begging for their tickets. I saw one person begging for the ticket in Kerala itself. That's why somebody said, we will pay the ticket. Because I can pay for one person easily, but I will not allow to go. But when the migrant is begging for the tickets, remember they used to send money, 4 people will be eating at home, he is begging. And who made them to beg? We. All of us sitting here, policy maker, everybody made them to beg. Otherwise, they never beg. I have not seen any migrant begging anywhere. They are not beggars. And we made them to beg. And they are heroes. They are not fighting war between India and China. They are not fighting war between India and Bangladesh or India and Pakistan. They are fighting war for their family members, fighting against poverty, fighting against malnutrition, fighting against unemployment. They are heroes for their family members. Lockdown made them zero. You made them zero. They used to be celebrated in their villages. When they come back, they are heroes. You don't treat them as, and you made them zero. Who made them? By your policy. I think that is something we should talk about that. I think we should have done much better. We should understand the number, corridor, and still we are not talking about big policy for them. And there is no big cash transfer. Already 4 months are over. March last week, April completed, June completed, July, April, May, June, now we are in July. July also lockdown, already 4 months over. Who is going to pay salary to them without work? You will pay to your domestic worker without doing work. Anybody will pay money to some driver who is coming to your house without doing any work. A lady who is selling fish or selling vegetable outside the road, she will come to many houses. Now she cannot come. So she is not able to make money. And like this, 140 million, I'm telling, I'm talking about only migrants. Of course, there will be lot of other people, lot of other people. So please remember, we have missed the great opportunity. I think India failed its migrants. India failed its own citizens. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, sir, for such a intriguing lecture. And so much of things sir has touched upon: migration corridor, data, policy, and what has been done, as the topic suggests, amidst this pandemic and series of lockdown, which will continue. The real question about direct cash transfer, based on our study, we also advocated that cash transfer of 2,000 rupees is feasible, and the fiscal outlay, the budgetary provision can be 1 lakh crore. Sir is suggesting 3 lakh crore, which we should do, at least for the urban case, we argued. And very strong words, but very real words, as we can say as academician and researchers, that hero made zero. I think that can be the headline, looking at the state of migrants and things happening in India. Now I'll invite our chair for the session, Professor Kak, to make her remarks and also raise any questions, clarification, or suggestion you have. Kak ma'am, over to you.
Ma'am, please unmute your mic.
Yes.
See, always, yeah. Okay, thank you very much to give me this opportunity. This indeed was a very brilliant, very informative lecture, and I know Professor Rajan is, one can say, passionately involved in the issues of migration, and the current one perhaps shook him and shook all of us, looking at the kind of attitude, callous attitude that the policymakers had towards this issue. The fact that the policymakers could just make an announcement at 4 hours notice to close the entire economic activity in the country, to stop any movement, any transport, and not to bother or not even to know this, didn't seem to know, to be aware of the fact that the way our economic activity is organized, we are not working in this organized sector where salaries will anyway go into our bank accounts and people will stay where they are. As reports came in from all these smaller units, smaller places, whether it was construction, whether it was gem making in Surat, or it was textile in anywhere else, that the contractors just shut their shop, they switched off their phones, and these workers had no way of contacting them to even collect their salary for the month of March. So this kind of ignorance and apathy of our policymakers sitting in the capital is really a tragedy, which I mean, should be criticized, which should be exposed, because with this kind of approach and attitude, the policies that will come out of their bags will very rarely be friendly towards our workers and our marginalized sections. So the fact that he brings out that our policymakers right now don't even have a proper database talking about migrant workers, therefore they don't have any policy talking about the magnitude of whether it's welfare, whether it is any other kind of measure that they have to take to sustain these migrant workers is not there. So but at the same time, there is no recognition of the economic significance of these migrant workers. They need support. They need both in finances, in terms of where they are living, in terms of their guarantees of a job, etc. There was no blueprint about it happening for the entire month of March, when they must have been talking about this going in for an economic closure. So lack of policies for immediate relief, he has brought it out very well, that people who did a decent day's work to earn wages were begging, were asking for doles were asking for help, which they hadn't done. When they move from place to place, they go for work. They don't ask for any extra favors, even from their employers. So all that didn't happen. But yes, this 5 kgs of rice is per person, which means you're right, 25 kilos per family. But my informants in Uttar Pradesh, for example, or Bihar tell me, even this is not absolutely streamlined. In some villages, you get it, a family, depending on the persons in their ration card, they get it, but in the adjacent villages, you don't get it. So this is not very properly streamlined. And some got in for the month of April, but they didn't get it in May. So talking about it from the ramparts of wherever they are sitting, our policy makers, even this is not streamlined. Of rice, for example, 1 kilo of dal that they are supposed to get, they got it, most of these ration card holders got it once in these 2 months. And then to be eating just 1 kilo of rice for a couple of months, or even these 25 kilos of grains, or 5 kilos per person for 2 months, 2.5 months, because this distribution is very much dependent on, as we know, on whether elections are nearby or they're happening or they've just happened. Otherwise, it's not really being properly implemented. The second very sad thing I see is when our Prime Minister tells us that they have passed on 500 rupees per Jan Dhan account to these women who are registered, who have a bank account. Now, not even that. People tell me they have not every woman who has got it, not every family has got it, but 500 rupees in these months, in this period of inflation, in this period of joblessness, no work, people walking back to their houses, and then you find, oh, I have 500 rupees in my bank account. And that also doesn't come every month. It comes, it's erratic. For some it comes, for others it doesn't come. Even that gas subsidy, cylinder subsidy that they're talking, it does come at times, it doesn't come at times. So that lack of policies for immediate relief seem to be all non-existent, except for once in a while, after all, you have to make statements from various platforms so you can say, well, we have passed on this and that. Similarly, direct cash transfers, if 500 rupees a month is a direct cash transfer, I don't know what era we are living in, or the direct cash transfer of 1,000 rupees per family. Really, we are totally out of touch, out of touch with reality. But these are our policy makers, and they're solely really responsible for what these 20%, 30% of our population is dealing with currently. Very nice lecture, very informative, and I thank you very much for this. And I hand it over to Simi and Arjun.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your comments. Now I would invite Professor R.P. Mamgain to quickly make his remarks and also raise any questions or clarifications he have. Professor R.P. Mamgain has also my teacher and has a long history working in these issues, especially in northern India, in Uttarakhand. And sir has worked in many places, all pertaining to labor studies in Institute for Human Development, in Institute of Dalit Studies, Labor Institute. Now sir is in as a Sankaran Chair in National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj in Hyderabad. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon to everyone, and let me thank to Dr. Arjun for giving me, for inviting me to this very interesting lecture, which is just now delivered by Professor Irdhu-Rajan. It's always, fascinating and learning to listen always to Professor Irdhu-Rajan, who is authority on the issues of demographic, as a demographer, great demographer, And I think, his passion for that, particularly to migrant workers, it's a really great thing, because I think, and everybody is concerned about, that the issue of the way the migrants were handled, and the plight, migrants which are facing it, as he has very nicely narrated. And I was wondering, that, because, how long it is going to continue. One of the issues which is most of us, which is bothering to all of us, how long this predicament of migrants is going on. And that is, one of the important things which, which people will be really, looking forward. Because as it has been mentioned that, the migrants, they have been very badly treated in the cities. And not only badly treated, I think they have permanently lost their incomes. The incomes which they have been earning into the city, it is a permanent loss to their incomes. And what is going to happen to them? Because, they have very poor, very weak social security arrangements, programs, even back to their villages. Leave aside for the timing, there's Manrega and all sorts, but this is a very huge decline in their real income, their incomes. And that means that, if their incomes are declining, their that means that, then their living standards are declining. Maybe that many of these people, they will be withdrawing their children from schools. They are already in that mode also, but they may not be able to pay the fees of their children. They may not be able to take care of their health, and they may not be able to take, the kind of new investment which they have been making in their agriculture or some other enterprises. So I think, this is a huge loss for the country as a whole, that, we could not deal the migration issue as what it should have been dealt with. But one thing, that, what Professor Irdurajan said, that it's a data problem, and the data is also, and kind of basically policy problem. So policy, I think, that, if now the government makes a policy, and there are a lot of policies also, which are on making, then what is the guarantee of that this policy is, it is again, taken forward? There are many policies, there are many programs, and we see that, these policies and programs, particularly when it comes to social delivery, social impact or social delivery, that these are generally start sometime after sometime by funds, very weak implementation, very weak monitoring. So how do you, I think this is a big challenge before the country. Another thing, which I am, bothered about, because, these migrants now are back to their villages, and which I can say that, that one of the small study I also did for Uttarakhand. So most of them, because the kind of situation the migrants, with our overall development policy was that, the rural areas were not functioning well. So they have been moving to the cities, not sheerly out of distress, but many of them are moving to the cities for the better wages, better livelihoods. So we have to differentiate between this, because many of them have been in the rural areas, but they were not getting the decent wage, the remunerative wages. They migrated for the better pastures. There are other people who are not having anything, but they have been moving like a kind of circular seasonal migration. So they are there. So these kind of migrants are, I think, at the more dangerous species, because they have not the kind of, any kind of durable assets back to their villages, and they are not done. Now they have been stopped of going, or the kind of opportunities which are in the urban areas. So they are lacking those urban that opportunities, because they are not able to come back to the cities. And these opportunities largely in the informal sector, which has been greatly hampered, implying around 450 million people, that people say that, So I think, that until and unless, because, this urban activities are gearing up. So we cannot conceive a big thing that they will be getting good sources of good income within rural areas, until and unless some big policy interventions are done there. And that requires, I think, that is one of the important things that, that most of the migrant workers, those who are, basically, those who migrate for distress, as a distress migrants. So before them, this survival question is very, very important. And for them, this Manrega is working as a kind of, employer of the last resort. I should not criticize the kind of the government that, they are not doing good. I think, they are doing good in crisis also. So first thing, that there was a failure, that failure in the sense that they could not recognize the problem, that this problem should be so huge. So and I think that made the problem more get into worse. And that I think now in the Manrega delivery session, they are doing good in the sense that everybody is now engaged in work. You ask anyone, those who want to work, they are getting work. But how long? My question is that how long this MG Narega is going to help them, because this is not a kind of permanent solution. So you have to, as a policy measure, I think you have to work out some permanent solutions so that they get some kind of regular, in long for a relatively longer duration employment at remunerative wages, not just simply by increasing the Manrega wages by 22 rupees. That's not going to work. So what I was suggesting, what I think we have done, we have also organized, because this issue has, I think, dozens of seminars webinars across the country have been conducted in recent past. So I was advocating, we are advocating rather in the last of our one of the webinar in NIIT Hyderabad, that we should do away with this 100 days limit. We should do away with the 100 days limit. So this 100-day limit should be done away, and people should be the choice. And I think choice should be given to every household who wants to participate in the MG Narega program. So if you look into that, it should not be restricted only to a household. That only a household gets for 100 days employment, but rather to individual within a household, whosoever wants to work. I think that if the government does it, that will be a great relief, at least to those migrants who have been working in distressed conditions in urban areas, so that at least they can get some kind of minimum survival income back in their villages. That is one thing. Other thing, there are a number of migrants. I think they have made a great, as Professor Rudra said, because they have built our cities. They have built our growth rates, because whatever the growth rate, as the chairperson was saying, so they have fueled our growth rate over the years, and this fueling of our growth rate, but they were treated very badly. So how do we ensure that they come back to the work? How do you ensure that the economic activity starts in urban areas? My experience, my gut feeling, and my interaction with the many people is that that most of the people who are staying in the villages, who have gone back to the villages, 80 to 90% persons would be coming back, because they don't have any kind of regular employment into the villages. So they will have the compulsions to come back. So what to do? We have to. I think we have to look beyond the agriculture also, because agriculture has exhausted over the years. I mean that's and it's good that if many people are coming out of agriculture and doing joining some other enterprises, some other livelihoods, and adding to their household income. That's good. But how do you do that? That will be done, I think, in urban areas. MSMEs are very badly affected, particularly micro and small enterprises are very, very badly affected. So how do you ensure that these migrant workers return to the urban area, but they get I think their dignified life, their dignified wages, their dignified living standards, and they are not left beyond. So who will give those guarantees? So these guarantees, I think, must come from the state. I think now state has to play a very, very important role. I am not saying that the state just leave it to the people and they let them the kind of laissez-faire, free flow of people coming and going. So that is not going to work. There are responsibilities of the sending state as well as the recipient state also. So if sending state is sending to the people as their migrants, they should know that how many people are there, how many of them are living in bad conditions. I think that kind of database everybody should have. Similarly, those who are coming to the cities, the recipient states, there should be, I think, that there should be the fair labor standards. I think what I can say that they should have they should be ensured basic minimum wages, basic living conditions, everything. And for that to happen, it is being now what you call popularized or advocated that we should have a portable social security benefits. as Professor Rudrajan has said, I don't know how long, how effective it will be to make a portable social security benefit. Particularly, I think it should not be limited to the PDS only. It should be limited to your health. It should be limited to your child education of children. It should be limited to your minimum wages also. So everything it should be limited. It should be linked to that. Not only just that you give them ration card and say that it has been made portable. So this needs some kind of reimagining, rethinking. How do we do that? Other things that these migrant workers have gone back to the city, to the villages, but they are having a very, very rich set of skills. Very, very rich set of skills. How do you use their set of skills within the villages? I think that is another challenge, and then there are many unskilled people also. So what we are trying to in MGNREGA that, and I think there are states like, Uttar Pradesh, they have done extensive survey of this migrant workers set of skills, and they are planning to have a skill development locally, and then linking those these skilled people to the local industries, local micro, small, medium enterprises within districts or nearby towns. So this has to be done, I think, in a big way, and so that they are quickly engaged in the mainstream development. I think these are some couple of points which I will just reflect it here, and I'll stop it here.
Thank you so much, Mamgen sir, and very pertinent points, especially for data. Government has also launched something called NMIS, National Migration Information System, and they are also integrating this skill thing. But as the reports and some studies also, we have launched a very big study for villages of those who have returned. Apart from those manual laborers, those do not have any skill, NREGA, others are not finding any way, and now forced to migrate again to the cities, even at lower wages. At the formal companies or manufacturing hub, they are providing some more incentive. My sister works in a medical company, and they are giving almost 1,000 to 1,500 per day extra as an incentive to come. But in Delhi, as I have also interviewed the last couple of days, people are now hiring in 60%, 70% of the earlier wages, and people are coming back. Indian Express has a series of stories every day from these places. So thank you very much, sir. And now I will invite Professor Arvind Pandey to another migration expert, my senior from Jawaharlal Nehru University. His PhD is on migration, and Professor Arvind Pandey has worked also a postdoctoral fellow at Glasgow University, and he was earlier working with National Institute of Urban Affairs, and has a very practical and practitioner kind of experience in looking into these policies and how we are tackling these things and planning process. Now Professor Arvind Pandey teaches at this Tata Institute of Social Sciences at Hyderabad. Arvind sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Arjun. Am I audible?
Yes, so you are audible.
Yeah. So actually, I'm using my bandwidth. There is some internet issue, so I'm just I'm not using my video. Okay.
No issues. We can have the screen up. Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to say thank you to Arjun to invite for this fascinating talk, and it's always fascinating to hear Professor Rajan, who has authority on the subject of migration, internal as well as international also. So many things have been already discussed. I would not take much time, but I would start from the very pertinent point from which Professor Rajan has started, that in SDG, this orderly, safe, regular and responsible migration, and through a planned and well-managed policies. So this planned and well-managed policy, the state is responsible for formulating such kind of policy. But if you just go through any particular policy designed in recent past, whether it's a National Food Security Act or the Draft Code of Social Security 2018, you will find that there is nowhere migrant. The draft policy is still, if you just go through the draft policy, there are at some places in some section you will find that the migrants are mentioned, but once the final policy has been enacted by the parliament, the migrant word has been removed at all. So you can see that how the policy discourse see their migrant workers. So these migrant laborer, whether they are men, women, children, they are the classical nowhere citizen of India. They have no right and entitlements, mostly in their places where they work and for whom they work. You can assume that the 4D, which we say, the dirty, dangerous, difficult, these 3 jobs, and consistently they face the 4th D, which is discrimination. These 4D are the characteristics of our migrant workers. And if you just see, after lockdown, most of these workers don't know their employer. They are hired by the subcontractor. Okay, so who is their final employer? They don't locate them because they don't have the register. We don't have the registration system of the migrant workers. So if they are not registered, they don't know that for whom they are working. And many of the workers, we have already seen that because of this sudden lockdown decision, these wages for job which they have already carried out, they were unpaid. They haven't received the payment for the job which they have already done, and that these a large percentage of migrants remained saddled with debt taken as advances from their employer, contractor, and landlords, because last 2 months they haven't have any job, any wage. So at this juncture, just giving any kind of relief package would not help. And we have already seen that these relief package also 1/3 of the it has only 1/3 migrant workers somehow receive the benefit for the package which has been announced by the government. And so the government should sidestep they have sidestepped their major responsibility of paying at least the compensatory wages to the informal workers, especially the migrant workers. So this is like obviously the major responsibility. And the intervention at initial phases, the government has decided that they will provide the shelters to the migrant workers through which is run by the NGO, but that was not very useful. And at the initial level, the argument of the government was that these workers, if they will migrate back to rural area, they are the serious risk of spreading COVID-19. But the consistent changing approach of the government over the time of period has made the life of migrant more vulnerable, because at initial phases when they were not allowed to move within the state where they are working, and so they were at the brink of starvation, and many of them were like they were at very vulnerable position. Now after when the train has started, they were started coming back to their origin state. At initial stages, the central government was not convinced to provide at least some kind of financial help to the state. So the center-state conflict was very bad. It increased the plight of the migrant workers. So consistently we are seeing that it seems that the current policy response to the crisis and toward the migrant workers are still embedded in the short-sighted framework that recognizes and reinforces the idea of two India. Obviously, one for those who have and those who haven't. So obviously, basically this we have already, the Professor Rajan and Professor Mamgeen has already discussed about this universal registration, minimum level of universal social security entitlement, and complete portability. So all these issues should be included under the ambit of the migrant worker, not the urban poor, because many times migrants are invisible under the umbrella of urban poor. But basically, if you see, these are the several entity in the urban area among urban poor, and any policy, if we are formulating certain policy, because see, the previous policies also, whether you see the draft code of Social Security 2018 or any other, like the current code which are pending, the occupational health and safety and working condition code, this code also, if you just see that how the migrant word is placed there, you will find that in general, there is mention of urban poor, mention of informal workers, but there is no specific mention of migrant workers. So there are at two fronts. First, obviously, we don't have the data because we don't register, we don't enforce the registration of workers at the place of destination, so that at least the state has the knowledge that how many migrant workers are working in their state. And another major issue is that most of the secondary data sources regularly do not provide the updated information of the migrant workers. And another point is, obviously, in most of the policy discourse also, migrants are invisible. So lastly, I would obviously go to the same word that that Professor Rajan has used, that India has failed its migrants in terms of policy discourse. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arvind sir, for highlighting these very pertinent points, and especially mentioning the changes in policy stances, as also highlighted by Professor Rajan, that the government of India has changed its stance. In fact, many of the meetings with ministry I also had, and the suggestions they were seeking. So during the first and second lockdown, very adamant that we will not allow anyone to go. And rightly, the public health system or any public social system, including the NGOs or the night shelters here in Delhi, now they have stopped giving food because of, again, financial and corruption, basically, in the nation's capital, Delhi. And High Court and Supreme Court is now giving order. Our mentor, Indra Prakash sir, is fighting that battle. There are many people who even don't have money to go back, or even to think, even they are not welcomed in their villages, as Professor Rajan is suggesting. So the hero made zero, again, I would say, and also many of the policy things, of course, Professor Rajan would touch upon. Now, with these sets of questions and suggestions, I once again invite Professor Rajan to elaborate on this, and then we have many questions over Facebook, over chat box here. We will compile it and come back again. After the chair, after the remarks of speaker, chair and other discussant, if they want, they can also respond. Then we'll go to the next set of questions. Professor Rajan, please.
Yeah, I don't want to give another speech anyway, because I have given one speech. So I think I will wait for some questions, but I want to make three small points. I think one is that I think people like you people, there is a daylight robbery by the bad employers, not given salary to the workers. I think something you people can do. I think it's something like it's like, I don't know why this employer could not be punished, that who are not paid salary, who asked the laborer to leave the place there on the road. I think something we can take up, because I was talking to somebody in the international migration, people who came by Vande Bharat flights, through so much money has been left by them, all the 5-6 months salary. And if somebody was telling me, if people who have come, it's almost everybody lost something like 2 to 3 lakhs international migrants. And we brought already, Kerala has brought already 1 lakh migrants. I don't know, you can imagine how much money they are coming back. I think this is something, we never discuss. I think this is something maybe, somebody should do studies on that. I think this is something important. And second point is that, when you talk about states of origin and, like I was talking, that who is responsible for the migrant? Is it origin or destination? But they are Indians. I think we should keep that Indians in the points, because when Kerala government wanted to bring the NR case from the Dubai, and I told them that they are not holding Kerala passport, they are holding Indian passport. So Kerala cannot do anything. So the Indian government has to decide when the flight should go. So there is nothing, something can be done. So I think it should be a tripartite, central government, origin and state should sit together and see that the migrants were given security from the work until they die, because many of them have no pensions. When they get old, they are again become beggars. So I think we should think about social security, including pensions. And another point which I want to make is this NREG. I think NREG, it's probably a good program. But then probably migration is a better program for migrants. If you talk about the impact on NREG in the rural poverty, probably I think NREG will fight. But the migrants probably fight more poverty than the NREG. So what the NREG want to sign compared to migration, NREG should be open. There should not be no limit for the days. People want to work 300 days, there should be no limit for the work. And there can be anybody, how many people want to work, they can work in the same family. So there should be no limit for the work, no limit for one family. Then probably you can allow the distress migration not to come back. I think you should, some people might be happy with the 200 rupees, but still you can think about that, but you should allow them, if you want to work 300 days, you can work, 250 days, you can work. But the making them, the fixing the date, and I know many studies have shown that many people did not get even 100 days. Some people, some states, some places I know, they never got 100 days. And finally, I think, registration of migrants, I am against that. Why should the migrants should register to you? What is the incentive for them? Unless you have an incentive, like for example, all of us have a Visa card, you have MasterCard, you have debit card, you have credit card. Like that, we should introduce what is called the Migrant Smart Card. Should be a special card. We are talking about digital India. Anybody want to migrate from UP, he should get that Migrant Smart Card. This card should be available to give with some, if he acquires the card, he should get free health insurance. You should give them incentive to register. Why should I register? Nobody will go. Why should we register? There should be incentive for the migrants to do. So you should have a card. Whenever they leave any train to go to, they are boarding a train from UP to Trivandrum. When they enter the train, there should be a place they sit the card. Then people know they left. So you have a data, this fellow who had our migrant card of the UP, he has moved to Orissa. He has moved to the, so you should be able to manage that if you issue them. For example, UP government says, I have issued 20 lakhs migrant smart cards. And they can tell, where are they? Because your card will tell you, like your mobile. My mobile company knows. Sir, you are not in Trivandrum today, you are in Delhi, because it knows I am calling from mobile. My mobile company knows where I am moving. So I think similarly, we can think of a migrant smart card for the migrants. Then you can identify their mobility. The problem is even the Sarmic train, we did not know how many trains we should send it to different states. We don't know the migration corridors. I think something on migrant smart card may be something I am thinking we should start doing. Maybe some state, some districts should start like a pilot basis, and then we can implement it throughout the country. Then it will have, the smart card will have his date of birth, his Aadhaar card, whatever you want, but it should be a special card, holded by only migrant. Yes, Visa card you are holding Visa card. You are holding what is called this credit card, debit card. Every card has certain benefits. Like that, migrant cards should have benefits. He can use it to buy tickets. He can use it to get his ration. He can use it where he works, where something happens to him. The family knows where he is there. I think you can track him by giving the migrant smart card. Thank you. I'll stop here because already 4:26. So let us see if anything. I saw some questions anyway. You can pick it up. You can. We will have one more round. Yeah.
Yes. One more round. And Madhusudan, if you want to quickly.
Okay. Yeah.
Try to
am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for letting me to say. And it's always nice to listen Professor Rajan, my supervisor there. So I'll be very brief, and I'll talk about something what we already know. That is data. Already we know that why the migration, the people who work on migration, face the problem. What are the problem we face? But I have when we go through the literature, what are the available understanding of the migrations? One thing we'll find that the migrations, there will be common term of the migrants, but they will not. Most of the literature, they won't say the what kind of migrants. So the general understanding that when today suppose there is a crisis that we are no idea who are the migrants they are facing. So let's see the family migrants. We have very less knowledge of the family migrants. The family as a unit, they go together to work. But we in our literature and in our available understanding, we have very much less understanding the family migrants, which industry they go, and what are their consequence if something goes wrong. So, and the consequence of the family migrants and the individual migrant will be completely different. But our understanding of migration in this case is failed. And also there is also a group called group migrations. We have a very less understanding about the group migration. So if you see the three kind of migration, but in general we're saying that okay, there is a migration and there is a people are returning. But if the family is returned back to the society where they're living, the consequence and the impact and the region will be very different than the other two kind of migration, right? So in my knowledge, there is a this lacuna is there. So I'll start. I'll take the. You also mentioned that Professor Rajan was saying that migrants were hero. That's very much right because I am from a village of Kalahandi district, which is very poor. So in my village, I have seen that in before this pandemic, they were respected at their family. They're respected in the society. They're respected through in other way, like they were actually bringing the remittance, right? That is the major source of a village economy. If you see that apart from agriculture, the migrations is one of the strong source of village economy. So now they become villains, not actually zero where we will say that they are silent people, but here they become villain, and they, so it will be interesting to see what would be their future actions, right? So whether they want to go back or not. But I was doing some survey, primary survey, that they wanted to go back, and some people they don't want to go back. So here, this family migration, individual migration, and group migration, who are the people who want to go back? Whether the family as a unit again want to go back or not? So those kind of things we can see. A second point I want to highlight the political economy of migration. What we know the political economy of migration before this pandemic, there, as you know, the India is a federal country and constitution allow person to go to another state and work. But right now, what will happen? I see the situation like in a European country, European Union, that there will be a competition for the labor, particularly the skilled labor, and other kind of labor. There will be like some sending state like Odisha, Bihar, and UP. They will be sufferer, and the other state will be gainer. So already inequality is there, regional inequality, and that things, I don't know what will be the scenario after this once it's the lockdown is open. So there will be a biggest debate on this political aspect, political economy aspect towards the migration, because before this pandemic, Professor Rajan and other, they were saying about the demographic dividend and their advantages for the country and all those things, and their migration was biggest I mean the part of that. The people, the state which receive migrants, whether they should be give some kind of other kind of financial support, so they can provide some the programs and the policy towards the migration. So those debate will start again. I think will be very much in central. So
Okay.
right.
Yes, in the respect of time, very pertinent points, family migration. Thank you, Madhu. And because of, we will just extend for next 10 minutes. We'll just take the question, chair and speaker, with your permission. We are already at 4:30. So we can extend till 10 minutes, sir?
Yes, please. 4:40. Yeah.
4:40. Okay. So I'll just quickly run through the questions and sir can choose which one to answer, and also the chair can conclude. So one question which has come from Saswati Chaudhary on Facebook: would the return of the migrants to the rural areas signify a correction of urban bias, and the government can take the cue from it and work on it? Another question from Yugal Sharma on Facebook: how would this forced migration affect our rural economy? And then Nomita P. Kumar ma'am is asking, rural areas are going to be overburdened by unemployment and also downward impact on wages. Even scenario of underemployment not far off. Present policy of giving work to these migrants through NREGA would help for 100 days only, but with the pressure, more members in the family and more mouths to feed will create further problems to be smartly handled. Those were few selected questions from Facebook. Many questions here, more than 10. I will just summarize them. Impact on agriculture sector. One very important question from Arunachalam Pijan sir, also had in his department. What type of achievements India made for the past 73 years of independence, implementation of 12 5-year plans, 30 years of liberalization, privatization, and globalization with respect to migrants in India. Another question by Dr. Muthuraja Chinnasamy. Can you narrate the status of women migrants? What type of policy suggestion would you like to suggest in terms of feasible policy levers which can be used? Again, one question on status of women migrants and the measures which can be taken to them. There has been also regional disparity, but also in terms of gender disparity, our institute, our faculty is also writing a lot on it, that many inequalities are being revisited. So this question again, how migration is much helpful for poor people, for a backward, poor state on a larger scale. Arunachalam sir has again raised what is the difference between a policy and an act. I think that is there any policy program taken by Kerala government to revive the informal sector? One very pertinent question which I think Professor Rajan can take, that how Kerala is taking this forward. But all other states have different economy, because Kerala also depends largely on remittances, and many skilled labor go from there, unlike Bihar, UP, Jharkhand and poorer regions. Is there any policy mechanism and regulation center in New Delhi like the one in Kerala for the migrants? Perhaps this question is to me. Can't the government stop mass migration of labor class by providing job opportunities in their own state? Very basic questions, and few more questions in the chat box. Sir, I would just take all. There are only few more, and then sir can go on. What Sudha Bharti has raised the question, sir, what you have to say that issuing identity card for migrant workers commuting to interstate for job purpose, and what about its legality and importance? Again, a very good question. Like my home is in Jharkhand, Ranchi, and I'm in Delhi. So whenever I shift my home, I have to get a police verification and other things. And as all our discussant, chair and speaker highlighted, that these migrants, poor migrants, are invisible. So isn't there any mechanism in terms of where they live, where they work? Most of them are informal again, and they don't want to come under the system. So those things also of regulatory measures. And Abriti has raised a question that migration is considered as a survival strategy for many migrant workers. And in present scenario, what are the major impact of reverse migration on the family left behind back home? I think other questions are also similar. So Professor Rajan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, questions are enough. Anyway, I don't think that some of them are, yeah. So what I will do, I'm not going to, I will pick up, I think I liked one or two questions. So I'll pick up those. And some of the questions are already answered by other speakers and other people. And I would like to emphasize that, for example, when you have a credit card, wherever you go, you can draw money. So like that, we should think of a migration smart card. I think that is something we should think, very innovatively. Innovatively you should do. Can you take a migration, suppose a BIGAR issue a migration card, not the Aadhaar card, this is a special card. The banks can issue a card which you can move anywhere. Or you have a telephone company give you a, what is called a mobile phone, what is called this a mobile SIP or something. Wherever you go, you can just use it. Why can't use the migration smart card? I think we should think seriously on that. Can we try to do that? And then the people talk about women migrants. I think women migrants are equally important. But the problem is that when we talk about even migrants are treated so badly, and definitely we know that migrant women will be much worse. We have to always see everybody in the road. So it's automatically they will be exploited much more. If the migrants, male migrants, wages are cheated, can you imagine the female migrant? So we don't need it. It is much worse. So I don't think we should specify that. And I would like to pick up the point about that what Kerala did. I think that is something for other states to do. I think even the lockdown period, Kerala was running 80% of the camps. You might have seen the Supreme Court thing, our secretary has gone there. For 80% of the camps were run in Kerala for the migrants. And Kerala has only 3 million out of 140 million. So where are the other states? So, and then we had a very common kitchen. The migrant can go and eat anytime you want, breakfast, lunch, dinner, this is something, of course, you cannot run it for so many periods. Lockdown was extended, they got some difficulty, I know that. Lockdown 15 days is fine, but if you are feeding somebody for 30 days, it's like a guest coming to your house. The guest comes to your house, 1 week is okay, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, then you also feel why this man is not leaving. I think they are guest workers, we call them guest. So you can feed them for 2 weeks, we fed them anyway. First lockdown 1.0, 2.0. And second thing, the Kerala employers are not very bad. That's why many could not go. Kerala government, the last 2-3 trains, there is nobody there. Because I talked to some migrants, why you are not going? I wrote it up in some of the newspaper in Kerala. They said, sir, why should we go? What we will do, what we will go back and do in my state, Orissa, Rajasthan, what we will do? Because anyway, there is no jobs. Not only in UP, nowhere jobs. Even India, no jobs. Forget about UP, Rajasthan. We are experiencing the highest unemployment in the country. So nothing about rural, urban, everywhere unemployment. No, thank God you all have some jobs anyway. That's why we are all talking. All people have no jobs. So what I will do, sir, because my employer was great. He told me, my employer, I normally what I do, I don't take my full salary from the employer. My salary is 15,000. I take only 10,000, send home every month. 5,000 I keep it. When I go home, I take 80,000, 1 lakh to my village in Tripura, Rajasthan. It's a big money in my village when I go with 1 lakh, 1.5 lakh. It's a big money for them. And now the lockdown period came. My employer given me the place to stay with social distancing. My employer given me food. I never went to government camps. I never went to the common kitchen. I was given food by my employer. He has given some money to transfer my home. Why should I go, sir? If the government gives me free train ticket, why should I go? So many people have not left. So bad employers, migrants have left. Good employer, migrants are still in Kerala. So I don't think we should worry about that. That's bad. One can learn some lesson from Kerala is that COVID has taught us identify the bad employers and good employers. Good employers, migrants are fully intact. I went to one hotel in Trivandrum. There used to be 20 workers from other states. After the 60 days lockdown, I went inside. I saw all of them. I was surprised. I asked the owner, nobody has gone? Free train? Nobody has gone. Because he was looking after them well. I went to another hotel. The employee was bad. He was running 3 hotels and he had 8 migrant workers in each one. So he had 24 workers. He told them on 24th night, when the Prime Minister told lockdown, he told them, I cannot do anything, you leave. He locked the hotel and he allowed them to walk in the road. 24 people, 3 hotels he was running. And they all went and stayed in the camps. And then they had food in the common kitchen. When the first train, they went back. I went to see him. All the 3 hotels is closed. Because I asked him, I know the owner. I asked him what happened. Sir, everybody left. Now nobody is coming, sir. So I am not running hotel. So 3 hotels is lost. That's the reality. So he was taught lesson by the migrants. So migrants also can teach you lesson. I think they should teach lesson to the bad employers. They should not go back to the same employer. Because you know they are bad. I think the COVID can teach lesson to the migrants to identify the bad and good employer. Okay, when you will always will know when there's a crisis in the family, you know who is good, who is bad. When the crisis, only you will know who is your good friend, who is your bad friend. I think COVID has taught migrant who is good, who is bad, which government, which policy, they know now everything. And don't take them for granted. Now they will do very well. I think migrants have suffered in the short run, but in the long run, I think they will win because the migrants will win in the long run. I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much, Arjun.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. And rightly mentioned the welfare measures taken not only by Kerala government, but also by people of Kerala, strongly linked with international markets and those many best practices arising from there. And thank you so much, sir. And also on terms of many points I have noted down, but in the interest of time, I had also many queries. But I'll quickly invite our chair to have briefly, ma'am, 2 minutes concluding lines, and then Simi can give a vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Professor Rajan. Very lively lecture and very informative. And from Kerala, very humane, as you said. People, workers, when they go from Bihar and Orissa, they feel that the wages, minimum wages, because they are implemented there, are almost what they would have got, half of what they would have got in Dubai and all, or working in these Gulf countries. So they are very satisfied with the kind of working condition, the freedom they have, and as well as the wages they get. So that indeed is the Kerala model. And here, distress, Manrega, a distress reducing scheme, basically 100 days wages that you get are not even the minimum wages which Government of India agrees upon, but for a starving, unemployed, subsistence, landless laborer or marginal farmer, it brings in some wages during the lean season in those farming communities. Policies that need to be for better occupational security and better welfare measures, they are absolutely important, and all the panelists have given very good suggestions about it. So the discussion continues, as does the appeal for direct benefit transfer to these migrant people of rupees 25,000. This is not much, and talking about 500 rupees per Jan Dhan Yojana is really very, very shameful. And we must put intellectuals sitting in ivory towers, getting their salary into their bank accounts, should really put pressure on this, on the government. Thank you very much, and I hand it over to the organizers.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am. So we formally come to an end of the program, and I would request all the panelists to turn on their videos. And I am very thankful to Professor Shakti Kak for accepting our invitation to chair the session, very important session, the special lecture delivered by Professor Irudaya Rajan. So it is always a delight to listen to you, and you can see the excitement and the curious questions that that comes up for you to answer, because you are so direct and so so rational in your statements, and it is always a pleasure to listen to you, sir. Thank you so much. So I also extend my warm thank you to Professor Mamgen, Professor Arvind Pandey, and Dr. Madhusudan Nag for joining us as discussants this afternoon. And thank you very much, Dr. Arjun Kumar, for moderating the session very efficiently. And Ms. Ritika Gupta and Ms. Anshula Mehta, thank you for organizing the session very effectively and efficiently. Thank you so much. And if Madhusudan and Professor Arvind Pandey can turn on their videos for a bit, we can take a screenshot, a group photograph. Thank you. So, yes, Anshula, over to you. Okay, thank you very much and have a very good evening. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Bye-bye to Professor Rajan and Professor Mamgen, in particular.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you, sir.